It's final exam time. Let's talk about it. So this is in central Texas and in the hill country, cedar country. And one thing you want to look at, and I've got 18 acres, so this isn't like where you're limited on where the pond can go. But one thing is to put the pond where it needs to be or where it wants to be. And you know, I found an area here. This is in that water flow that I've had. I think you can see the wet mucky I've got. But first you got to get your location, and then you dig you a test slice and see what you got. And we're talking about a keyed dam, which we're going to explain in a minute if you don't know what that term is. But if you're in central Texas, I would insist on that. And if you got a pond builder that doesn't understand that term, I would probably walk away. Anyway, I took the excavator, dug a test slice, and this is, I'd say this is 7 foot deep. And I had a hard time. I don't know if you can see the rocks. Big rock there, and a big rock here. And by big, I was just going one bucket width and had to widen it so I can get around the rocks to get them out of there. And my knuckle quit working. I don't know what happened. I checked the fittings, nothing's amiss, but had some problems with it. But what you're looking for when you do the test slice is you want to find clay. And if you got clay, you're gold. And then you start deciding, you know, how deep the clay is. But this hole was dug today, and you can already see it's filling full of water. And I'm going to try to explain the layers, because I kind of consider it 3 different layers. Let me get in position here. So we've got the topsoil, which is this right here, and that's probably 12 to 18 inches deep. Then I'm going to call the gravel layer. I'm calling it that because that's what Zach Weiss had called it. That's that layer there. And I thought it was clay, and I'll still test it to see if it's clay, but it may be clay mixed with a lot of small rocks and stuff that keeps it from holding water. But then as I went down to probably, I'd say 6 feet, I finally hit clay. And let's see if I can get this camera in position to show it to you. You see this right here where it looks slippery? I mean, that's actually not just clay, but it's wet clay. So that's what you're looking for. And I've dug as deep as I can get. But the next step is to get below the wet clay. And at that point you find the seam that's holding the water that the water's running in. Because if it's wet clay, water's seeping through it. If it's dry clay, the water's above that layer. And what a keyed dam does, and I think this will be a good example of it, you're gonna build this trench all the way around where the dam's gonna go. And you're gonna go below the wet clay to the dry clay, and then you're gonna take clay and you're gonna fill this trench with that clay. And I'm gonna change location so I can better explain it to you, because this is the important part of it. And this was the game changer that kind of changed my life as far as interest in water retention. So you got your keyed dam, which is the trench. You switch hands here. You know, you dig the trench here, you go down to that dry clay underneath the wet clay, then you fill that trench full of clay. So now you've trapped that water. It can't go past that dam, and it can't go down because it's a clay bottom. And what happens, and why it's a brilliant thing for us here in central Texas, is it stores water. So if you look at this pond and you look at that water, and you got to visualize going this way on the same plane, going this way on the same plane, and going backwards on the same plane, that's all saturated water. It's built a big puddle of water underground that's massive compared to what you're actually seeing. And the benefit of it is evaporation. And I can attest to it with my pond, because I look around, I'm always looking at ponds in the neighborhood. But my pond drops slower than other ponds. because if I lose an inch through evaporation, that water is already stored in the ground, immediately coming out. Now you are displacing that water, so where somebody else loses an inch of water, I might lose a 1/4 inch of water because it's replenishing it. So that's awesome. The other benefits of it is, you know, I consider surface water to be trash water. I mean, it's got manures, you know, dead animals, dead bugs, manure, Roundup, pesticides, herbicides, sediment. All that stuff is in a surface flow, and that's kind of what's destroying the world, in my opinion. We've resorted to get the water out as soon as we can, get it dumped into drainage creeks, which goes into rivers, which goes in the ocean. But what you really want to tap is that underground water. And what you see down here is the underground water. The earth filtered out all the bad stuff, so this is cleaner water. So yes, with the Key Dam, the initial flow with the top water, you're going to get dirty water. But once that flow stops, now comes the underground seep, and with a full pond, it's going to push clean water in and push the dirty water out. So that's pretty awesome. So we have success here because I'm limited. When Zach built my pond, he had an excavator probably 10 times this size. It was a huge monstrosity. In fact, the bucket was probably 4 foot wide, where I'm probably at 18 inches. So I'm limited on the depth I can dig, but I want to bring up, you know, probably the next phase on what to do here now that we know this location is going to work. And that's, we're going to have to take the whole pond area and start moving the surface soil off. And I'm going to use my skid steer. I'm using what I got on this whole project. What we want to do, and this is a good example over here just from this hole I was digging. Look at all the different colors of dirt. You know, like I said, we talked about 3 different things. We had the topsoil, we had the gravel layer, and we got the clay layer. And you can see all the color differences here. So if I use a skid steer and I just come across this area, I'll be able to separate that layers, because we're gonna need the clay for that Key Dam, and then we're gonna need the topsoil to bank over the clay so it doesn't dry out, put a layer of it. So the skid steer will be used to just slowly, probably 2 inches at a time, start removing all this soil. And the other thing it'll allow me to do is to dig deeper, because if I end up with, you know, if I can dig, let's say 7 feet right now, if I get 2 feet of this off away from the dam area, that's another 2 feet I can dig. And it'll also get me past that layer of rock, because that layer of rock is just floating on that gravel. You can see it down here. There we go. So anyway, there's no, in that first foot of gravel, so you got the topsoil and gravel. If you can look, all the rocks were in that range here. So that's probably the amount I'm gonna be scooping out. That'll get the rocks out of the way so I can trench it properly, and it'll give me the depth to dig down properly. Now, I don't necessarily want to do it this time of year. I dug it mainly because we're wet. I wanted to see the water, if there was water, if there was a water seam down there. Like I said, I couldn't dig any deeper. We found it, but I can't go down there and show you the vein. But like I said, we'll have to let things dry out, because we don't want to, you don't want to be dumping clay in this trench and trying to pack it down while it's wet and full of water. So it'll be some time before we get on the dam project, a couple of months probably. But right now we know what to do. We know our location, we know it's going to work, and as we get time, we'll come out here and just start gradually depressing this area. I'm pretty excited about it. It's my final exam. I've been doing this stuff for about 5 years as a hobby, and you know, I guess it was a serious enough hobby where I bought this excavator, and everything I've done was just soaking ponds. This is the first attempt at a real pond. But anyway, that's where we're at. Exciting times. And I'll label this as part 1, 2, 3 and stuff, so that if there's some local guys just interested in just this project, don't want to see this other stuff, they'll be able to find it. All right, you have a great day.